Okay, so first off, I'll say Tanse, Gagia, Meryl Nitsigasan. Hello, my name is Meryl, and my father is nêhiyaw from Red Pheasant Cree Nation in Saskatchewan, and we're also citizens of Siksika Nation in Alberta, and I also have British, Dutch, and English ancestry. And I create, large-scale photographic self-portraits. Also, more recently, I've started to create films and include some sculptural objects within exhibition spaces. And all these works, are reflections of questions of identity explored through one's lineage, history, culture, and one's connection to the land. And I draw on personal experiences of my diverse ancestry to construct site-specific scenes with these handcrafted objects that I make over several months in my studio space. And, again, these works, reinforce, the intersection between actual and imagined experiences, really in hopes of, better understanding ourselves and our histories. So this work is titled Murmur, and one of my inspirations was this large flock of starlings that I created. And I was looking at this incredible movement that starlings do. It's this really hypnotic formation in the sky called a murmuration. And birds, fish, insects, do this movement. And they collectively move as one being. And so to kind of recreate this really amazing, phenomenon, I cut thousands of different shapes of starlings out of North American history books. And I attached, glued all these birds to this large wire framework, which was in the shape of a spiral. And then I suspended it in front of a concrete wall outside, and then I stood within it. And so it's only one sculptural piece, but I selected 3 images from that photo shoot to create this kind of movement within and kind of story within the image. Yeah, well, I collected used history books, because I was trying to figure out how to make these starlings and kind of imbue the ideas that I wanted within these kind of small birds, and part of the work was also looking at language. And these history books, represented that. And I was looking at how language, has constructed our identities. And the murmuration, these beings kind of moving as one collective being, represent, our collective identities and how we are all influenced by each other. And our identities are really strongly influenced by our stories and our languages, kind of within any culture you're in. And so these books are the histories that we as young kids are taught in school. And so these books have partly constructed our identities as Indigenous peoples, but also as Canadians. And so they represent our relationship to the past and how such pasts are defined by the present. And so in Murmur, I photograph myself to really understand my kind of independent existence, outside of, this kind of construction of collective identity. But at the same time, I'm still kind of held within it. And part of my, my sense of self is still influenced by these stories. And so that's what I was kind of thinking. And also within the title, with murmur, I was thinking about not only this natural occurrence, but I was also thinking about heart murmurs as well, and how, heart murmur is a sign of a troubled heart. And, our hearts, have been broken as Indigenous peoples and, with the impact of colonization. And so we are in this stage of truth telling and working towards healing our hearts. So that's a little bit why I used the books, as language, to bring in language into the work. Yeah, I think I talked about that just like a little bit, but I think that, it really, again, kind of reinforces that, these shared connections that we all have through these words. And I'm trying to, reshape these histories and these narratives into this new form, through these birds, and to, again, use this imagined experience to reimagine, a new world, or a new, a new history in a way. So. Yeah. So, the natural world is something that has been this constant source of inspiration for me over the years, and not just something I observe, but something that I feel like deeply connected to. And, when I was creating Murmur, I was fascinated about, again, how starlings kind of move together, in these beautiful flowing formations. And, there's no leader, they move as one. They're kind of seeing and responding to each other in real time. And to me, that really, reflects a kind of deep connection that and trust. And I think that reminded me of something that we all could learn from. And so, also for me, spending time in nature, it really helps shift my thinking away from thinking about myself. And it reminds me that I'm, part of, something bigger. In my work, I try to listen to the land and respond to it. And, many Indigenous worldviews speak of animals and the land as our relatives, and with their own stories and voices. And so over the years, I've taken inspiration from that, and that's kind of how I try to shape my ideas and how I create these stories that I'm telling within my works. With Murmur, I wanted to kind of reflect on what it means to kind of move together, humans and animals and land and all, as part of like a larger connected system. It's kind of about finding, balance and responding with care, I think. And nature, helps me do that, and it really keeps me grounded and creative, and again, connected. So. Yeah, I guess I feel like, I don't actually see the natural world as being, chaotic. I guess what might seem, like chaos is often just something we don't kind of fully understand yet. And, nature is always, I guess nature always has a purpose, I feel like, and, it's moving in cycles, and it flows, and it has rhythms, and it kind of finds its balance in its own way. So, I always see like animals are, they migrate, and rivers kind of change paths, and, wildfires, make, kind of clear space for new growth. And, all this kind of might look like, kind of random, but it's all part of this kind of bigger, system at work. And so with Indigenous knowledge, I find that teaches us that everything in nature is connected, and each part has its role. And, everything that seems kind of unpredictable, like usually has kind of a purpose in a larger picture. And so I think as humans, we often, try to control or fix things because, we're kind of uncomfortable with uncertainty. And, but as I've been, learning over the years, is just that nature teaches us that balance isn't about stillness. It is about change and movement, and kind of always adapting. And, if we really kind of pay attention, we can learn so much from the land, and, there's meaning in everything, and, from the trees that grow, and how, weather shifts. I just feel like, the more we listen and kind of respect, the more we can see that, nature isn't kind of chaotic, but it's more wise, I kind of see. So. Yeah, that's a good question. So with Murmur being part of becoming in the light of a miracle exhibition, I really hope that, people start thinking more deeply, I think, about understanding, history, especially, the stories that we are told, and the ones that are left out. The exhibition, I think is about, transformation and growth, and that, connects strongly with my work. As I was saying, Murmur is inspired by, starlings and how they move together. And it's a way of, kind of turning history into something living, and something that, we can, move and speak again, I think. So, I hope people, come away thinking about history as something that we can question, we can challenge, and even reimagine. Art gives us space to do that. And, it helps us reflect, on the past, and think about how we want, to move forward, with care, and honesty, and creativity. And so I think, in the bigger picture, I hope Murmur can spark kind of conversations about how, we can help like reconnect to each other, with our histories, and with the natural world as well. So I have at the moment a solo traveling exhibition called Bloodline, which started at the McMichael Canadian Art Collection in Toronto, and is kind of making its way across Canada. It went to the Heard Museum in the States, but right now it's currently on view at the Art Gallery of Greater Victoria for several months, and then it's going to move on to the McMaster Museum of Art in Hamilton. And I have some other group exhibitions happening too. I mean, I'm excited about this one on site. But I am working on new work that is looking at the nêhiyaw language, and kind of bringing language to life through my images. So I'm hoping that, late next year, I'll be able to kind of reveal some new works. So